This is an oil tanker, and the thing to know about an oil tanker is that it's really, really big. 4 soccer fields long, carries 2 or 3 million barrels of oil, and it weighs more than a skyscraper, all of which makes it slow, 10 or 15 knots. That is, no joke, the speed of a bicycle. Our global energy supply lines move at the speed of a Schwinn, and let me show you on this globe why that's important. If you biked all day, how much of this globe do you think you could cross? Like, maybe the width of the point of this pen, right? Maybe, if you worked really hard. Okay, now imagine hopping on your 12-speed, starting in Dubai. Where's Dubai? Here we go. Starting in Dubai, and now imagine that you have to bike out of Dubai, all the way down here, down the coast of Africa, down, across the Cape of Good Hope, back up the other coast of Africa, all the way across the Atlantic, through the Caribbean, before finally arriving at the deepwater oil port in Louisiana. That would take forever on a bike, right? Which, remember, is the speed that these oil tankers go. Like, that is how our oil travels, as if it were on a bike. And maybe you see where I'm going with this. This is a map of global oil flows put together by JP Morgan. Don't worry about all this text, we'll explain it in a minute. These red lines show the oil coming out of the Middle East, going out to the rest of the world. This is the stuff that's been cut off. Here it is back in December before the war. There it goes, the oil is flowing. But remember, it moves at the speed of a bunch of bicycles. So now it's January, and the oil is just finally reaching parts of Asia and Europe. And we're into February before it hits the US, and then it hits refineries in South Korea that then sends it on down these pink lines to Australia and New Zealand. So when the war starts and the oil stops flowing, there's actually still a ton out there, taking its long, lazy little bike ride around the globe. That's a big part of why things seem weirdly normal. For most countries, the oil shutdown has not reached us yet. We're still getting shipments that were sent out before the war started. So when do those shipments stop? If you look at that map again, it says most deliveries to the US will stop around April 15th. In Europe, they stop around April 10th. Asia, April 1st, so it's just getting started. But here in parts of Africa, it was March 20th. We're already well into it. And that's even hitting places like the US, where we are still receiving oil from before the war started. Countries whose shipments ran out are creating this big surge in demand. So anytime you go to the pump or pay your power bill, you are bidding against them and they are bidding against you. And all of this is going to get significantly worse when China and Europe start running out of shipments too and surge demand to replace it, which is really close to happening.
Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, before I get started, I'm going to give all glory and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakodesh. Double honors to the apostles and the elders at Great Millstone who teach and rule well. And peace and salutations to elect being the sheep of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, with sincerity, truth, and charity. Right? And this chaos is coming, right? We're going to keep warning people right until it happens. Right? And as you can see from the video, is by April 16th, you're going to be seeing more effects of this global oil supply shortage, right? In the video, the guy basically said how, there's, if you watch the full video, the guy was basically speaking about how, how these effects are delayed, right? But they've started to hit other areas already, right? They've already started to hit parts of Africa and Asia, right? But USA, it hasn't hit fully yet, but it's already getting bad, right? And this is all scriptural. Right, this is the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, and verse 3. It says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. And though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry." Right? Tarry, it says, this is the word. It says tarry is a verb meaning to linger, wait, or stay in place longer than expected. Right? Usage examples or synonyms: linger, wait, to delay, to stay, right? So what's happening right now? You're seeing a delayed chaos, right? But you're slowly starting to see the effects of this, this oil crisis start to occur, right? And you already know, what did this devil? He told you this devil kills snakes, right? He said, there's gonna be. Well, they said there was gonna be another pandizzle, right? Pandemic, right? Right. You have this devil. He says what? He's making videos already talking about the next P-dizzle, right? And this is not just gonna be about this is not just going to be about a global virus. No, this is going to be about, a coordinated event, right? A planned event, right? Which the other one was also planned, but this is going to be, they were warning that this was going to be worse, right? They were telling people this was going to be, there's going to be cyber pandemics, right? Gas shortages, food shortages. Right, why do you think this devil, he's buying up all the farmland? Right, it's because he wants to make sure he has, when all hell breaks loose, he wants people going to him, and ultimately he wants everybody going to him for that microchip, right? It starts off by manipulating the gas supply, the food supply, right? Inflating the prices of goods and services. All these things, right? They're doing this to create a order out of chaos, right? This is the book of 2 Ezra, chapter 16, verse 21. It says, "Behold, victuals shall be so good, cheap upon the earth, that they shall think themselves to be in a good case, and even then shall evils grow upon the earth, sword, famine, and great confusion." Right, so you can still, you're still able to buy certain things out here. Right, you can still order Uber Eats. Prices of certain things. There's still things you can get for cheap. Right, however, it's gonna get so bad where you're not gonna find anything. You're not gonna be able to find a fucking, you're not going to find a fucking can of cat food on the ground if you try to eat it. That's why people are going to start resorting to eating themselves, right? And now you're seeing what people are going to start robbing each other for basic goods, right? For gasoline. You have a solar generator in your house. It's not going to save you because your neighbors they're all going to hear that they're going to see and hear that you have light and power coming to your house. Well, they don't have power. Well, what do you think they're going to do, right? They're going to fucking rob your ass. They're going to rob, take what they steal. And they might take other things too, right? They might take your children. They might take they might take you. Or they might take your body parts, right? So it says, "Then shall evils grow upon the earth, sword, famine, and great confusion." Right? So you're going to see, starvation, right? And then people eventually are going to, have to, fend for themselves because of the lack of bread. This is 2 Ezra, chapter 15 and 19. It says, "A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword, and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation." Right? So, you're going to start seeing people kill each other. Start seeing people, rob each other's houses. Right? How do you think this is going to happen, right? By the cutting of imports, cutting of imported goods, cutting of transportation, right? Buying up the farmland, right? It says, Bill Gates' ownership of 275,000 acres of farmland across the United States, across 17 states. And it says, Gates has stated that these purchases are not part of a grand scheme, but are investments made by his firm for sustainable farming and increased productivity. Which we know that's fucking bullshit. We know this devil is he's a liar. This is the book of Job, chapter 13 and 4. It says, "But ye are forgers of lies, ye are all physicians of no value." Right, which we know this devil's a fucking liar. The scriptures say in the book of Psalms, chapter 55, it says, The words of his mouth were smooth like butter, but war was in his heart. Right. This devil, he manipulates, certain things, right? And what is this guy, Bill Gates? What type of books does he read? Right. Let me show you. Right. It shows Bill Gates at his desk, and it says, "How to Lie with Statistics," right, on the book. So that's how these devils, they like to show things in plain sight. They like to use their revelation of the method, or just because they believe, if they already showed you in some way or form that they can go ahead and carry out their plans, right? This is why these people, they're complete evil manipulators. Right? They're gonna get fucking judgment. The Lord's gonna destroy them. But before the Lord destroys them, this mark of the beast has to be implemented and made mandatory in society. All right, and we're going to go into that in a second. But this is the book of Job. Job chapter 20 and 23. It says, "When he is about to fill his belly, Yahweh shall cast the fury of his wrath upon him, and shall rain it upon him while he is eating." Right? Let's read it one more time. It says, "When he is about to fill his belly," that's referring to Esau, "and Yahweh, which is the true name of the Heavenly Father, shall cast the fury of his wrath upon him, and shall rain it upon him while he is eating," right? This devil is going to get destroyed with those ICBM nuclear missiles. Right? But before any of these things happen, the mark of the beast has to be implemented. That's just according to prophecy. That's just according to how things work. Right? That's just how the Lord set things up. The book of Jeremiah, chapter 51, verse 11. It says, "Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. The Lord hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes, for his device is against Babylon to destroy it. Because it is the vengeance of the Lord, the vengeance of his temple." Right? Who are the Medes? Those are the Russians. Right? And what are the arrows? Arrows represent those nuclear missiles, right? Those ICBM ballistic missiles, right? And when you hear the scriptures speak about a flaming arrow, that's speaking about the missiles that are going to come upon America, Babylon the Great. This is Revelation chapter 13 and 16. But going back to what we were speaking about earlier, it says, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Right, or 666. Right, so you see this devil, he's going to try to get everybody under this microchip, the RFID microchip, right? That's what the scriptures speak about when it goes into the mark of the beast. And they're orchestrating all this chaos to ultimately lead up to that mandatory, mark of the beast implementation. They're going to implement this throughout all nations, throughout all societies. Right, whether you're poor, whether you're rich, whether you're a prisoner, whether you're just a regular walking person, they're going to try to get you to get chipped. Right, and they're going to do that by starving people out, giving people, offering people incentives, whatever the case might be. He's gonna try to get everybody to take that microchip, right? That's implemented into the body. Right, this is not a spiritual, mark, right? This is not a fucking spiritual mark, right? This is a physical mark. And a lot of camps basically say that. There's a lot of camps, they say this mark is spiritual. Or, they say that the mark is, not keeping the law, right? How the fuck does that make sense? They say that the mark is JC. Man, these people, this is why these people, they have to fucking die. Because, they're ultimately leading the flock astray. Right? Anybody telling you that the mark of the beast is, the the name JC, or not keeping the law, or sleeping with a white woman, or a spiritual mark, right? The scriptures, it speaks about, no man shall be able to buy or sell. How are you supposed to buy or sell with the white woman? Right? How are you supposed to buy or sell with the name JC, right? It just doesn't fucking make sense. So, ultimately, these people, they lack wisdom, and you cannot follow these people, right? If you listen to them, you're ultimately going to get destroyed, right? Because if you go and take that chip, you take that mark, you're going to be fucking destroyed. Right? The Lord's going to send those nuclear missiles upon you, right? And some men also on the right hand side, they might die for refusing to take that mark, right? And that's an honorable thing for honorable way of serving Yahweh Shem Yahushai. That's an honorable thing for the Lord, right? Certain brothers will have to literally die because of that. This is Revelation chapter 20 verse 4. It says, "And I saw thrones, and they that sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that had been beheaded for the witness of Yahushai and for the word of Yahweh, and who had not worshipped the beast, nor his image, nor had received his mark upon their foreheads or on their hands, and they lived and reigned with Yahushai for 1,000 years." Right? So certain men, they will get beheaded for this truth. Right? Some of us may have to die for this truth, and that's going to be an honorable thing. Right? And also some other men, right? Also men of the Lord, they will get beamed up by these chariots. They might not have to die on this side, right? But either way, this is going to be the certain brothers will have to go through certain things, and other brothers will have to go through other things, right? There's just whatever the Lord basically plans for certain individuals, right? So this destruction is coming. All of this that basically was spoken about is coming, right? So with that being said, I'm going to end this lesson right here. Lord willing, this is edifying. I'm going to give all glory and honor to Yahweh Shem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakodash, and double honors to the apostles and the elders at Great Millstone who teach and rule, and peace and salutations to elect out there feeding the sheep of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Shalom.